another special article section today. I have articles on China. The protest over the fishing ban that we talked about yesterday. See the link above. The China to set up ADIZ. And what is ADIZ? And One Belt, One Road begins to stall. Now let's get into it. Okay. So for this next section, I have 3 more articles I want to discuss about the Chinese and what China is doing. So the first one is One Belt, One Road begins to stall in Southeast Asia as Chinese economy reels Japanese media. Okay, so as many as you may or may not know, One Belt, One Road is generally China wants to give money to every country in the world, and they've pretty much been successful in most Southeast Asian nations, most Africa, and some Europe countries. In doing so, they want then to build train station, airports, and harbors that will all basically go back to China. And so they lend countries money, but then eventually when payment comes due, they technically say, okay, you can't pay, but we'll take the port that you paid us to build anyway. But now we own it. So things like that. Anyway, this is the update of today about the One Belt, One Road. As most countries in the world are throwing their resources into epidemic prevention and economic relief during the COVID-19 pandemic, many China-led massive infrastructure projects in Southeast Asia have been put off indefinitely, fueling speculation that China is reeling from a battered economy in the wake of a pandemic, the network reported. The Nikkei Kazan reported on Tuesday that a project financed by the Chinese state banks to build a 140-kilometer high-speed railway between Jakarta and Kota Bangkok in Indonesia had been halted. Another project in Indonesia, constructed by 2 Chinese state enterprises, which was originally scheduled to begin in 2021, will be put off, according to the Japanese media. In Myanmar, a power plant project jointly undertaken by a Chinese state enterprise and a Hong Kong company has stalled partly because of a supply chain interruption caused by the pandemic. Another power plant in Cambodia, as being constructed by China, will not be able to operate in May as planned. Japanese media also mentioned that Thailand has attempted to postpone negotiations on a deadline of a high-speed rail project set to extend into China. So see, One Belt, One Road right there. Thailand hopes to negotiate on the section from Bangkok to Nakhon Ratchasima can be postponed October instead of concluding in May. Okay, so they want like a 6-month extension. However, China has not replied to Thailand's request for the postponement. The China's Ministry of Commerce said that China is signing new One Belt, One Road projects with 57 countries worth a total of $26.2 billion in the first quarter of this year, which was a decrease of 14% compared to last year. Well, most countries can't really keep affording it. That's kind of how they get in the trap. It's kind of like most states and countries, even in the West, or households. You buy, but then you never pay it off until they take it out of you with blood. In the first quarter of the year, there's 14% compared to the same time last year. The Japanese media reported the ministry said that the China current priority is to get the economy back on track and running to retain the cooperation with the neighbors, countries, and supply chains. So this could be a good or a bad sign. No, even Australia has something similar, and same thing for a lot of Europe. Maybe they should take a step back, pay off their bills, and have patriotism toward your own country versus selling your country to somebody else. Somebody will never take care of your country as much as you will, or most normal people will. But anyway, let's move on. We have 2 more articles. So One Belt, One Road is stalling, but I also wanted to get into this one. This is the main one. China to set up an ADIZ in South China Sea. You might be asking me, what is ADIZ? And I'm going to share with you. This is pretty important. The Ministry of National Defense on Monday morning, confirmed that China is planning to set up a defense indemnification zone in the South China Sea. And ADIZ is a country's airspace in which all civilians aircraft must identify themselves and announce their location. The MND clarified Monday night that although China has stated that it would establish ADIZ in the South China Sea, it has yet to formally announce one. The Philippines ADIZ is currently the only designated airspace in the disputed region. Because remember, this is why it's important, because this goes back to the South China Sea, how they say they own the Vietnam Parcel Islands, part of the Philippines, part of Malaysia, and part of Indonesia Sea, and Taiwan. So China basically wants to put this ADIZ in the space, and basically you acknowledge that it's Chinese territory. What do you think about that? Would that be a good idea or a bad idea? I personally think that's China bullying. All right. The ministry stressed that the ADIZ is usually set up by a country according to the national defense needs, but that it is no basis in international law. Defense Minister Yen T of National Security Director Chung Kuo attended the Leisure Yuan Foreign Affairs and the National Defense Committee Goodwill Fleet, the Epidemic Evasion Conference Monday morning to give a briefing. During the meeting, a legislator was asked how many air defense indemnification zones there were around Taiwan. Referring to the Chinese planned ADIZ, Yen replied, "There are two identified zones, one in the East China Sea and one in the South China Sea." The MND pointed out that evening that Taiwan also has an ADIZ in addition to Japan and the Philippines. So yeah, so where is Vietnam's? Where is Malaysia's? Vietnam. What is kind of interesting. The Vietnam has parcel islands, but they put nobody to live there. Now this is going back for you. For a while, Japan and Korea were fighting, and they probably still are, over this island called Dodokdo. And this was during the big nuclear meltdown in Japan. Korea went to help them out, but then they backstabbed them by trying to say this island is ours. So when this happened, Korea eventually put a family or two on that island. So, hey, people are living there, so it's our island, we own it. Now, in Vietnam's case, to my knowledge, there is not a living soul on those islands. If Vietnam really wanted to stress the claim that it owns it, they should put people on the islands. That's kind of why China has been building artificial islands, because then they can say they own area around it. And it's not just the island that you own. Keep in mind, you own the airspace above, and you own the fish and resources below. So owning water in the ocean means owning land and air above. And we have one more article to read today. This is about, again, the Chinese saying that, remember yesterday there was a fishing ban. So on the fishing ban, Vietnamese, Philippines fishermen protest the fishing ban in the South China Sea. Fishermen associations in Vietnam and Philippines protested on Monday China's annual summer fishing ban on the South China Sea has called for their nation's government to oppose it amid the threat of strict enforcement by the Chinese Coast Guard. Yeah, China said yesterday that they will sink any boat that fishes in their waters. Vietnamese fishermen have complete rights to fish in their waters under the sovereignty of the Vietnam Fishermen's Society, said a statement posted by its website. Said that it was reported by the Vietnamese state media. It added that the ban has also violates Vietnam's sovereignty over the partial islands. So again, Vietnam should put people on those islands permanently. China, which claims virtually all of the South China Sea, despite competing claims from 5 other governments, announced Friday its annual moratorium of fishing within waters of claiming jurisdiction over. That includes waters down to the 12th parcel of the 12th China Sea, eclipsing the parcel islands of the Saibai Shoal. That's the one that even the United Nations says Vietnam owns, but China doesn't care. What the United Nations says doesn't affect China. China usually only enforces the ban on its own fishery vessels, although fishermen from other countries are also meant to comply with it. This year, however, the Chinese Coast Guard and Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs has promised a crackdown on illegal activity during the 3.5-month ban that runs to August 16th. The news said that the law enforcement campaigns will safeguard the rights and interests of the marine fisheries and protect the marine ecological system. The law enforcement campaign, coupled with the agricultural behavior of the Chinese Coast Guard in recent months, have some fishermen associating with the region claiming for a response from their respective governments. The Philippines government should not waste time to wait for China Marines officers to arrest our fishermen, Fernando said. The National Federation of Small Fish Folk organization in the Philippines said in a statement that Chinese bullying should immediately be stopped, and he protested. We have international, and local fishery laws that can be implemented to combat Chinese aggression. Well, what laws is for you does not apply to me. That's what the Chinese think. And when they keep giving countries money and favors, then usually countries agree to that. They have no right and moral ascendancy to declare the fishing ban on guise of conserving fish stock in marine waters that they have not any legal claim on, and they have massively destroyed through their reclamation activities. Yeah, that's when they're building those small islands. RFA spoke to the Vietnamese fisherman who said he and others would continue to operate near the parcel islands, but are concerned about the CGG, China Coast Guard, and maritime militia harassing them. If we are chased by the Chinese ships, we would report to the local Vietnamese Marine Police, but normally the Marine Police do not help. Well, that kind of sucks. No fishermen have been arrested and brought to the Chinese mainland before, to his knowledge, he claimed. There were about 10 fishing boats in the Parcel Islands on Monday defying the fishing ban. The Vietnamese Fisheries Social Society said it has sent a document to the Vietnamese government and ruling Communist Party. It called for Vietnamese authorities to take drastic measures to oppose the attempt to halt China's activities. The government-backed society called for increased sea patrols to protect the local fishermen of the Vietnam territorial waters. So I wonder what the Vietnamese fisheries, if they pay any tax. But also keep in mind that Vietnam is the head of ASEAN this year, Asian Southeast Nations Committee, and they want to try to promote countries not to rely on China. So if other countries see China bullying Vietnam and Vietnam bowing, then other countries will not follow Vietnam's lead. Another Vietnam source within the fishing community at Bien Chu, Ong Quang Province told RFA that the fishermen in the areas typically contact with the local marine search in the rescue center with Chinese ships cut their fishing nets or steal their catch. The center of the compensates for the fishermen in the loss. So basically, if China steals the fish from Vietnam, then this agency pays the Vietnam fishermen what they lost. Okay. Both the Vietnamese fishing companies' sources required autonomy to avoid the repercussions from the authorities. China's summer fishing ban is a recurring point with the contention between the South China Sea claimants. When last year the ban was announced, Vietnam issued an official post, but the Philippines, whose President Rodriguez has sought closer ties with Beijing, did not formally protest. Exactly. So that's why I can't feel sorry for the Philippines. Their president wants it. Hunter Strive, a fellow with the U.S. Navy War Council, Hawthorne Center, and Maritime Historic Research, said the purpose of the fishing ban was to create a cloud of unfree Sino-centric order in the South China Sea. To make this declaration vision a reality, China is working to impose its will and its own domestic laws on other countries' fishermen and local Southeast Asian nations. So I'm going to stop here. What do you think? Do you think that it's okay for countries to do this, whether it's for to get water rights, maybe sometimes land rights, maybe sometimes invading privacy? But if you are from one of these countries, what is your government doing about this, or how has your government not, by taking no action, how has that affected you and your livelihood? And how would you resolve our protest or boycott this issue? Please like, comment, subscribe to the questions I leave below. I'd really love to hear from you. Hi. The small clip you saw was brought to you by Loyal World News. If you like what you saw, you should subscribe and look up my daily Loyal World News report for its full version. If you don't want to watch it on YouTube, prefer to be on the road, I also have a podcast in every full-length video I put up.